page 1 of the opening recitations. If you don't have that, it's fine, and you just listen. If you do have it, please join us in the recitation, the opening recitations. Page 1. O Mother, sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddha. All Mother, sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddha. All Mother, sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddha. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. To the top of page 6. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all Mother, sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the attachment and aversion. May all Mother, sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. sorrow, may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mothers, sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Page 10. These next three verses, we are paying homage to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And we are expressing the qualities of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. In the context of paying homage, we're expressing those qualities. And in expressing those qualities, then, we are aspiring to achieving those qualities. The protector who possesses great kindness, the omniscient teacher, the perfect one, the basis of oceans of merit and qualities, homage to the Tathagata, purity, the cause of freedom from attachments, virtue that liberates from the lower realms. This alone is the sublime ultimate reality. Homage to the Dharma that pacifies, having been liberated, you show the path to liberation. Devoted to the moral precepts, you are a field of perfect qualities. Homage to the sublime Sangha. Then page 43. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, four continents, sun and moon, I visualize as a Buddha land, and offer it. May all migrators experience such a pure land. To the Gurus who possess the three Kayas, I offer the outer, inner, secret, and thusness offerings with my body, wealth, and all phenomenal existence. Please grant the unsurpassed supreme attainment, whatever slight virtue I may have gathered through prostrations, offerings, confession, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching. I now dedicate it all to complete awakening. Om Guru Deva Dakini Ratna Mandala Pratijas Soham. Please turn the wheel of Dharma, of the greater, lesser, and common vehicles in accordance with the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. Yosen jogging or doing a imagination should go to control for cages a dog, the gate in the logistics of the months they home can bring you the mess of like the bed on some young like to make a water jet home, cheating compulsion, blood the tattoos on your girl and magic jello to JJ. Ningam bus and then comes into the do dobro change. Chucky important to Sanji Kunging on one. Rasen Chokungun Sun Tonse Patsa Vela Mesha La Sola. Please turn to page 1 of the booklet. Ineffable, inconceivable, and inexpressible is the perfection of wisdom, unborn and unceasing, like the nature of the sky, the sphere of activity of the discriminating awareness, wisdom, to you, mother of the conquerors of the three times, I pay homage and praise. In the language of India, Bhagavati Prajna Paramita Hridaya. In the English language, the Bhagavati, heart of perfection of wisdom. Thus have I heard at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling at Vulture Peak in Rajagriha together with the great assembly of monks and the great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan entered the samadhi on the enumerations of dharmas called profound illumination, and also at that time Giteshwara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, beheld the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and perceived the five skandhas to be empty of intrinsic nature. Then, by the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of noble lineage practice the profound perfection of wisdom, train us in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara. The Bodhisattva Mahasattva said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble lineage, who wishes to practice the profound perfection of wisdom should perceive things in this way, perceiving the five skandhas to be empty of intrinsic nature. Form is empty, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are also empty. Therefore, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. They are without characteristics, not born and not destroyed, not stained and not unstained, not decreasing and not increasing. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no being, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no dhatu, up to and including no mental consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since bodhisattvas have no attainment, they rely on and abide in the perfection of wisdom. Since their minds are without obscuration, there is no fear. They pass completely beyond error and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of the perfection of wisdom, fully awakened to surpass complete and perfect awakening. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom is the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that completely pacifies all suffering. Since there is no deception, it should be known to be true. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is stated thus: Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha. The Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in this profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Bhagavan arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Excellent, excellent, O son of noble lineage. Thus it is, O son of noble family. Thus it is one should practice this profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have did. Even all the Tathagatas rejoice in it. The Bhagavan, having so spoken, the venerable noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and the whole assembly and the entire world, with its gods, humans, demigods, and Gandharvas, rejoice and praise the words of the Bhagavan. Thus ends the Mahayana Sutra, known as the Bhagavati, art of perfection of wisdom. So on page 2, at that time, the Bhagavan entered the Samadhi on the enumerations of dharmas. So the enumeration of dharmas, as we discussed yesterday, it's the counting, right? The laying out of these dharmas. What are dharmas? Dharma is a very important term in the Indian context. So important that it carries over 40 meanings. This word dharma comes from the root word dhar. Dhar has the basic meaning of to hold or to support. To hold or to support. So on the basics of this root meaning, dharma has acquired over 40 meanings. Often in the Hindu context, dharma these days has the connotation of like sacred duty. And that often directly or indirectly is also related to the notion of depending on what caste you are born in, there is a set of duties that are considered sacred. Famously, in the Bhagavad Gita, some of you may have read this text, God in the form of Krishna declares that it is better to die performing your sacred duty than to prosper engaging in someone else's sacred duty. And so dharma there. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also talks about swadharma, like your personal duty. Then he talks about kula dharma, which is your duty in relation to your family. He talks about varna dharma, the dharma in relation to your caste. And then he talks about finally sanatana dharma, the eternal dharma, the unchanging dharma, which some Hindus today prefer to call the religion they practice the eternal dharma, sanatana dharma. And so that's one notion of dharma. Then in our Buddhist context, when we use the word dharma, often it doesn't have that connotation of sacred duty. Because the historical Buddha rejected this idea of you are born into a particular caste, and till death, you are responsible for maintaining the expectations that society and God or nature expects you to perform. So dharma in the Buddhist context often don't carry that connotation of sacred duty, of law in that sense. So dharma can also mean law. And it has that connotation in Buddhism, but not in the legal sense of law, but more in the sense as perhaps what we would call natural law. Natural law. So then among these natural law, the most obvious one that the Buddha placed emphasis on is the natural law or the natural workings of causality, cause and effect. So if there is this notion of sanatana dharma, eternal law, so to say, it would be this unchanging principle of cause and effect, causality. Whatever seed you put into the ground, if and when it sprouts according to what the seed was.
You can't plant an apple seed, hoping and expecting, and that a mango plant is going to sprout. It doesn't happen like that. Dharma, then more so in the Buddhist context, then is used in one context to refer to reality as it is, how things naturally are, how they arise, how they abide, how they fall out of existence. That's part of Dharma. So Dharma is the reality of things, and that reality is the reality that we want to directly see, understand, realize, and then habituate, take into our experience through practice. Then related to that would be the instructions, the teachings that the Buddha gave with regards to this reality, with regards to how to discern this reality, with regards to how to take this reality and blend it together with our experience until finally leading to the full realization that results in the state of Buddha. All those teachings, all those practices, we also call Dharma. So that's one meaning of Dharma. Now, that meaning of Dharma then is also related to another use of the word Dharma that is sometimes translated into English as phenomena. Phenomena. Now, obviously, these are related, these two meanings. As in, phenomena has a certain reality to them, to it. And the Buddha shows us what it is. So capital T Dharma, the teachings, show us the reality of phenomena. And then the deeper reality of phenomena, again, capital D. So the teachings that show us phenomena, big D, small d, and looking deeply at phenomena, we see Dharma, reality, capital D. Of course, in Sanskrit, there's no caps. It's all just written the same way, Dharma. So the enumerations of Dharma here is, first of all, the Buddha was seeing phenomena. How phenomena appears, how phenomena abide, how phenomena dissolve, pass away. And in seeing that, see clearly the reality about these phenomena. So two things, you could say that in this, the enumerations of dharmas, you could say, is looking at phenomena. And then, in looking at phenomena, coming to see clearly how reality is, that's the profound illumination. Here. So these two. Then in the context of relating or understanding the Heart Sutra as having all three levels of practice, what we covered yesterday as Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. Hinayana then, here is the enumerations of Dharma. So we have to start by looking at phenomena carefully. Now, when it comes to looking at phenomena carefully, there is no end to investigating phenomena. First off, we have to say that. There's no end to investigating phenomena because phenomena is endless. There's also no end to investigating phenomena because different people investigate phenomena for different reasons. Some people investigated phenomena and now we have a microwave oven. Some other people investigated phenomena and now something that weighs a ton can float in the air. Yeah. So there's no end to investigating phenomena and learning from phenomena. Yeah. The Buddha had a particular set of phenomena that he investigated for a particular purpose. So then a particular set of phenomena and characteristics of those phenomena was identified by the Buddha, and then the Buddha taught that to us. These are the phenomena that we need to investigate, see clearly, understand, observe how they turn up in our lives, or in fact, see how the way we experience things comes into clearer focus when we are able to sort them out using these categories enumerated by the Buddha. So the five skandhas, in some ways, I think it's okay for us to say, to acknowledge, doesn't cover necessarily the whole range of possibilities when we look at this and ask, what is this? Because similarly, right, when we ask the question, what is this? Well, depends on who you're asking. If you're asking, right, I don't know, medical internist, she'll have a lot more enumerations than just the four elements. If you ask, right, a corpse breaker, you don't know what that is? In Tibet, that's how they do burials. They chop up the body and feed it to the vultures. That guy will have a different enumeration based on the task of disposing the body most effectively. Right? So the five skandhas doesn't cover all the possible ways to enumerate what is this. However, the five skandhas is sufficient for what the Buddha wants to help us see. You understand that? So there's no need, you know, when you look at the five skandhas, the enumerations of the five skandhas, to feel like you need to defend the Buddha. Says, wow, this covers everything. If someone says, whoa, there's this other element, what about that? You know, where do you put memory? Where is memory in this? You know, it's not that the Buddha says, this enumeration of the five skandhas is exhaustive without qualifications. It is exhaustive insofar as the task at hand. And what is the task at hand? The task at hand is to be free from dukkha, to be free from suffering. Insofar as that task is concerned, understanding and relating to and beginning to experience things through these lens, this set of lens, which is the lens of the five skandhas, is more than sufficient. So here, there are the enumerations of the five skandhas, lower that a bit. There's a little wing, wing, wing. There is the five skandhas. So we first encounter this, right, on page 3, that noble Avalokiteshvara was placing his mind on this topic of the five skandhas. Yeah. So that's the first time this five skandhas turn up in this text. Then on page 5, in answering Shariputra's question, Avalokiteshvara then says, you should perceive the five skandhas to be empty of intrinsic nature. So before we look at the five skandhas as empty of intrinsic nature, in fact, we have to back up one step. In the sutra, he doesn't begin Avalokiteshvara from this back up one step. Why? Because people familiar with this material will understand that Shariputra already knows that you, me, don't have intrinsic nature. Actually, the Heart Sutra is not just saying that. The Heart Sutra goes another step further, which is the component parts that make up the you also don't have intrinsic nature. Which is really literally, if you want to be literal about what he's saying here on page 5, when he says that the five skandhas don't have intrinsic nature, actually he's saying something more than just there's no intrinsic nature here. But the components, the parts that make up this, the parts themselves also lack intrinsic nature. So we say it's a more subtle, more profound understanding of what is here. So let's start from a step before, which is this is lacking intrinsic nature. And by extension, that you is lacking intrinsic nature. And so we begin by, in our kind of deluded everyday going about, right? This imputed I, and we talked about this yesterday, this imputed I, if you pay attention, right? And these are the exercises that you do. These are the meditations that you do. Without necessarily sitting on a cushion, as you go about your lives, right? If you're not too hurried, not too busy, right? From time to time, you should kind of just even momentarily go, where is that I? Where is that I? Where is that imputed I? Yeah. And what happens when you look for that? Let's pretend. We can all imagine, right? We have the power of imagination. And you're like, where is imagination in the five skandhas, by the way? Never mind, But here, let's use imagination and say, okay, now I'm going about my life and, doing whatever I do. And then, Dr. Lai says, from time to time I should go, where is this imputed I? How do you imagine this playing out? What might you answer yourself with?
For me, it's immediately my life situation. Yeah.
Your life situation, your job, you begin to see that.
Yeah.
I see. What else might you notice? Yeah, if you from time to time like raise this question. So let's say over a span of time, you are raising this question. Yeah. Without like, having to pull over your car and contemplate deeply, where is this imputed I? But, here and there, you start peppering your day, with where is this I? Maybe not even imputed. And over time, what might be some of the lessons that you think you would learn? Yes.
I will notice that I of yesterday is not the same as you.
You will start noticing that the I of yesterday is not necessarily the same as the I of today. Yes?
Dependent upon what you're seeing and doing, perceiving.
So it's sort of depending on what you're seeing and doing and what you're perceiving, then it seems like another kind of I.
Yeah, it jumps from a sense of feeling to a sense of thought to a sense of memory.
Yeah, sense of feeling, thoughts, memory. There's so many shades to this I, it seems. Yes.
It's here, it's there, it's where you place it.
Yeah, it's here, it's there, and then sometimes even nowhere, right? Yes, what else?
It's like at its basis thing, it's the sense of subjectivity and here-ness.
And subjectivity and here-ness. Right? Now it gets more abstract sometimes, right? Sometimes very concrete. Yes.
Also the role you play.
So you start to notice, depending on the role that you're playing, that particular role that comes out as you're asking that question, that I. So what do we learn from all of this?
It's changing.
It's not
Yeah,
stable.
You can't find an abiding I. So you begin to notice sometimes the sense of I is very strong. Sometimes the sense of I is barely there. Sometimes the sense of I is completely around the nose when you have a cold. Okay, I'll stop with what body parts and where the sense of I turns up. So different times, So what conclusion should we draw from this? Which is this I that I'm so sure exists and exists in a particular way is a lot more fragile and whimsical than I have assumed. But despite that, on another level, I think, let's be honest, we just, no, but there is an I. The Buddha says, no, that I is always an overlay. Even then, if you analyze that sense of I that you say is always there, not really true. It changes. Then you say, but I remember, right? My memory. You think your memory is so accurate? Think again. Lots of research has been done in the area of criminology on how memory and the memory of witnesses is actually very malleable. You can be shaped into remembering this and that. Forget about, like, I'm not even talking about concocting, something out of completely nothing, which can happen. But versions of what happened. Our memory is actually not that reliable. But throughout all of this, there's a semblance of unchanging reliability. It's that the Buddha is pointing to and saying that is the culprit. Now, I think from the perspective of evolutionary biology, you could say that also, that culprit, right, also in some ways ensured that of all the species that exist, we have evolved to be at the top of the pile. Thank goodness. In some ways, yes, of course, thank goodness. But comes at a price. So in some ways, you could say that the Buddha's project is rather subversive. As a species, it's subverting, what the species has assumed to be an unquestioned good. And saying, no, you need to free yourself from that burden. Obviously, he's not advocating freeing yourself from that burden so that the next leopard that sees you gets a good lunch. He's not advocating devolving from how we have evolved. But he was saying there is a different way of being. And so, in fact, like in one of the early recorded encounters, somebody met the Buddha and they could tell, that this man is different. Maybe how bright he was, how radiant he was, how peaceful he was, all of that. And they come up and they say, who are you and what are you? And he didn't say anything. And I'm like, are you a tree spirit? It's like, no. Are you like some demigod? No. Are you a god? No. Basically, in this encounter, this person brought out all the categories that he knew in his world. Are you a genius? Are you a hero? Are you a warrior? La 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 la, all of that. And the Buddha kept saying, no, 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 no. Finally, it's like, what are you? He says, I'm awake. I'm the awakened one. I'm the Buddha. That story has an interesting end. After the Buddha says, I am Buddha, I am awake, right? Apparently, this guy goes, oh, okay. He walks off. What a start to a career of teaching others. So that story tells me, don't give up so quickly. Even the fully awakened one in his first encounter declaring, I am awake. Oh, okay. The guy just walks off. Because it's also interdependent. He did not have, we would say, the right conditions to really get anything out of that encounter. He walks off, So anyway, we should pay attention, like this self, this I that in some ways, of course, like I can tell you, I wake up in the morning, even without thinking, right? I'm pretty sure I exist. But it's an unexamined I. So you come across this expression, like in later Tibetan kind of laying out of how to do this in a more systematic way, they come up with expressions or phrases like the I only exists if you don't analyze it. If you just leave it on a superficial level, then the superficial I certainly exists. But when you investigate, when you probe into it, when you zoom into it, you cannot find that I. And the zooming into it, the probing it, the looking, the searching of it is part of the method, is part of the what we call practice, is part of the what we call meditation. In order to raise doubts about this I. So quickly, footnote, zoom back to yesterday, me saying at the very beginning, if right now your sense of I carries a lot of suffering and confusion, before you do this kind of investigation, the Buddha always recommends, first, try to build a different sense of I, a healthy sense of I, on the basis of generosity, cultivating generosity, and disciplined conduct, as in restraint. Restrained from causing harm in order to achieve what you want. Like these two and other, other qualities. So try to do that. I think in our modern context, or in our American current context, I would say, find yourself a good therapist. Really, not just find yourself a therapist, okay? Find yourself a good therapist. Yeah. Well, maybe. Find yourself a good therapist that can help you kind of switch from a damaged sense of self to a healthy sense of self. And then maybe not even a Buddhist therapist, but a good therapist, and then you can add your Buddhist flavoring. You can do that yourself. Then you have a healthy sense of self. Then within this context of a healthy sense of self, then you begin to search for this self. And then when you begin to search for this self, what happens then is you begin to see how it's not as solid, reliable, real, as I have habitually assumed it to be. Then in a more kind of systematic way, the Buddha gave the enumeration of the 5 skandhas. So in a more formal way. So we might begin first by casting some doubt on this I. On the one hand, I'm so sure I exist. Because I would say things like I'm not now hypothetical, I'm telling you. Confession, I suppose. I would say, well, I'm not like that, no, I can't, that's not me. Say things like that, with a lot of conviction. I would say things like, I don't do emotions. I don't understand that. Right? So I have kind of a strong sense of like what I am, right? But then I also know the Buddha's teachings, And to know the Buddha's teachings doesn't mean, oh, I have to believe it. To know the Buddha's teachings is to say, I trust that there's such a thing as Buddha. I trust that Siddhartha achieved Buddhahood. And I trust that these are the words that he said. So now I'm going to investigate. And each time I say things like, wow, I'm not like that. Even if you have the image of the Buddha going, that's enough already, Some doubt, some good doubt, you bring in. Then you become less rigid, You become less rigid to, I'm like this, I'm like that, I'm not like this, I'm not like that. Yeah. You see, this is all very good preparation. Why, As you get older and you're older, your body will fail you. And when your body fails you, it will affect your mind. And even your mind is going to fail you on that basis. But there's a deeper level of mind that will not fail you, if you know how to cultivate that deeper mind. I'm watching aging parents, aunts, uncles, and then seeing myself, If my sense of self is that I have good memory, I don't forget things easily, that's going to change, And if I hold on very strongly to, I'm this, that's all going to fail you. And then what? Then what happens is, I'm going to die empty not in a good way. Empty as in feeling that everything I have worked for, that's gone now. That's the problem with this, I'm like this, not like that, I'm this, that, It will get to a point of like, I can't wipe my own butt. And then what? Because you so strongly hold on to, I can do this, that. Now I cannot even clean myself. Now what? Right? You can imagine even when you're losing your mind. And the thing is, when that happens, you can watch that going on and you have no control. But if your sense of who you are is so anchored on having control and suffering so much. But if you can just let that all unravel, unfold, and like on this deeper level, no, this is not me. This has never been me. These are just conditions. Conditions passing. Conditions arising and abiding and ceasing, That which knows. That which knows. The one who knows. That's Buddha. So this is the Buddha nature we're talking about. This is the nature of mind that we're talking about. The more we can abide in that now, work on it now, then inevitably when things fail us, conditions, they're not failing us. We're just taking it personally. Right? Even the expression, when my body fails me. And then, if the body has a lawyer to speak on its behalf, it's like, hey, hello. I never made any contract promising you, I'm just doing my own thing, It's your problem if you want to claim me as having signed a contract with you. Where's your evidence? Right? Those are the delusions that we carry around. Those are the contracts, but they're all diluted. Yeah, again, like watching again. I can see, that burden. Have I lived too long? That question of have I lived too long is based on having an idea of living like this is worth, living like this is not worth, all of that. So we sometimes will say, understandably, when I'm no longer living in this way or that way, I don't keep me alive anymore. Now, I mean, there are very complex issues related to medical technology and what medical technology, the lengths that, we're going to keep someone alive. So I know that's a complex issue. But more generally, what I'm saying is, I'm not addressing that and suggesting how you should handle that. But I'm saying that that feeling, is going to come. And then when that feeling comes, know that it comes because we have a very fixed idea of this is a good life, this is not a good life. But there's something more abiding, more basic than that. And the Buddha is pointing us in that direction. So that even when, like your ordinary kind of like memory and all that is gone and deteriorated, there is something more basic that if you cultivate that, that will not fail. The one who knows. The one who knows also knows, cannot be controlled. This is just how it is. The body will do its own thing. The body will deteriorate at its own pace. Nothing you can do about it. The mind would deteriorate in its own, or the cognitive side of the mind. And the activities of the mind will do its own thing. Yeah, initially, when we're healthy and good and everything, we are working with like disciplining the mind, the cognitive, all of that. Yes, as long as we're able to do that, we should do that. Yeah. But do that with an understanding that there will come a point where it's going to do its own thing because its nature is I'm leaving now, ta-ta. You cannot at that point, complain and bemoan the fact that, it's going to leave because it's a guest, it's not the host. Sorting out guest and host, Zen vocabulary. The Thai forest tradition, they say the heart and activities of the heart, sort that out clearly. And return to the heart. Mind and nature of mind, of minds, thoughts, emotions, and nature of thoughts and emotions in the Tibetan. Or primordial wisdom and sorting out between primordial wisdom in the Dzogchen system and thoughts and mind. Sem and Yeshe, distinguishing the two. Sem and Semni, mind and nature of mind. Thai forest tradition talks about the heart and the activities of the heart. Zen talks about host and guest. So they're all pointing in the same direction. Yes.
Is there a host? Is there a host?
Sort of. Is there a host? Sort of. without intellectualizing it too much, you know. It's just this being able to distinguish what is guest and what is host. It's a relational. Yeah. That's a good question. Is there a host? Philosophically, no. But that's just philosophy. That's just Buddhist philosophy talk. Okay? Then you have to say no. Then in the debate courtyard, you know, you better say no.
Is there a fancy Asian word, Pali, Sanskrit, Tibetan for the ultimate conventional sense of stuff like Alaya Vaishnava? Does that suffice any Tibetan type of?
There are various, yeah, you know, Buddha, yeah, sure, Buddha nature, la la la. But we should not, we should only understand it as part of the method. Yes, because this is a tradition that is very suspicious of, for good reason, you know, of how tricky the mind is to find a hook, to try to hang everything on and go, oh, holy hook. Yeah, there's no holy hook, you know. But we try our darnest best, you know. We're like, okay, it's not the ordinary eye, it's not this eye, it's the five skandhas. No, even five skandhas is not the holy hook. It's like, oh, so it's not the five skandhas. And then you're like, you know, you keep looking, right? In hopes that something,
Catches.
yeah, will be there for you to hang everything on. You're like, I'm home, you know. That's the theism that we're talking about yesterday. That's the real issue about theism. Right? That's the critique of theism. It's not about, you know, did this world get created by someone or not? And those are secondary issues. The real issue is related to this.
Did the Buddha say in Sutra rarely at the time of dying reflect endlessly on Atman, not Anatman?
What? No.
Never.
No. Yeah. The question is, did the Buddha said that at the time of death? Can you repeat that?
Reflect on Atman.
Reflect on Atman instead of Anatman. No. Buddha would never say things like that. Buddha would never say, you know, oh, at the time of death, you know, think of Atman. He poked holes on Atman from beginning to end, you know. In his opinion, this sense of, you know, spiritual self, like, is the last desperate attempt to have a holy hook. He has no problem with ordinary hooks. After all, we have coats, we have, you know, yeah, you know, we have our, you know, North Face and our, you know, Patagonia and whatever else, you know, that needs to be properly hung up, you know, it's like, no problem, you know, with ordinary hooks. Ordinary hangers. But when you have to have a holy hanger, that's when it... Yes.
How does the holy relate?
How does the holy hook relate to fear? Well, out of fear, right? So we go looking for holy hooks. Yeah.
I'll just relate to fear as.
How does one relate to fear as a holy hook? I don't know how. Hmm? The threat of? What does no self mean? The threat of no self. So what does no self mean?
No functional self. And then
No functional self? Why is there no functional self? There is. You got up, you got dressed, you got clean. Functional self is mostly there, you know. Buddha has no problem with the functional self. That's not where the problem is.
you're talking,
Uh-huh.
and then the self that we're talking here.
Uh-huh. Which the Buddha says don't exist. Yes, the self, right?
Right.
What about that?
The fear, okay, for me,
Uh-huh.
the fear in meditation, in examining it,
Uh-huh.
yeah, in the letting go process. And then the fear sort of wells up and says,
Yes.
stand back, watch it.
Uh-huh. That's part of the process. Yeah. The fear that arises, you know, that's part of the process. Aryadeva, one of the great masters in this tradition of, you know, analyzing these teachings on emptiness, he says, when emptiness is first understood, you know, when this teaching of emptiness is first understood, and if great fear doesn't arise, there's only two scenarios. One, you are already a Buddha. Two, you're more stupid than a cow. So, yes, Kurt. No fear, right? Ayurveda says, you know, Ben, you're more stupid than a cow. You don't get the implications of that, you know. So they say great fear will arise, you know. Yes.
Fear of meaninglessness.
Yeah. So all sorts, you know, depending on us, you know, all of us have, yeah, all sorts of stuff, you know, no end to all the variations of that. But basically, it points out, yeah, fear would arise, you know, then you investigate again. What's that fear, right? And then you gain confidence. Yeah. And there's also teachings on, you know, if too much fear comes, then there are also teachings on, like, you know, don't forget, you know, who is the one who knows. So temporarily you have a holy hook. Yes.
Does traditional Buddhism accept and morph into how science moves on? The other question I asked is that it talks about no consciousness. You mentioned yesterday.
Uh-huh.
There's no scientific studies on souls, but University of Virginia's been studying consciousness for years
Uh-huh.
with reincarnation.
Yeah.
So we know that Monroe Institute of Noetic Science. We know that things, we are more than our physical body.
Yeah, we're more than a physical body. That Buddhism accepts.
But how does it relate to emptiness? Because in emptiness, there is no Buddha nature that transcends physical space. That's what I'm gathering from the teachings.
No, it's not saying that.
But that's what I'm hearing.
Because of a materialist background of either yes or no.
It feels like the teachings are yes.
The teachings is not either yes or no. It's relational, you know. Yes, University of Virginia is one university among many. I came from that university. Yeah. Yes, but it's one person studying reincarnation, you know.
Scientific method.
Sure.
So
Yeah, sure. But I'm a little skeptical. From a scientific point of view, I'm skeptical. From a Buddhist point of view, I have no problems with rebirth, and I don't need proof of that sort. From a scientific point of view, I'm not sure If you ask me that question, I'm not sure about the science there. Yeah, I'm just not convinced. One time, just to illustrate, where I'm coming from, I suppose. I was invited by one of the professors in the School of Engineering. They had a humanities professor, someone whose only purpose is to teach the engineering students one class, on the humanities. And so every year she would invite one of our professors in the religious studies department to go give a talk on Buddhism and the different religions. So the professor who usually does it, she wasn't able to do it that year. So I was teaching some courses as a graduate student, one of the senior graduate students. So, they asked me to go. I went, and so I wasn't so ready to, state rebirth as a scientific fact. And that really annoyed the humanities professor. And she says, just across the street, there is research going on about that. How can you say that it is not true? I said, well, here's why I'm not saying that it is a scientific fact. Because, well, I said, I'm not saying that it is not a scientific fact. I'm just saying that Buddhist claims at the end, Buddhist claims. Because the same set of evidence that a Buddhist would use, right? To say that rebirth is real, to a fundamentalist Christian, that set of evidence shows that Satan is at work and alive and powerful and planting evidence left and right, up and down to mislead people. Well,
They are using scientific methods.
yes, they're using scientific method to say we have no other explanation for these phenomena. That's the state of the research up to this point. We have no other explanation, right? And the nature of scientific research is that it will keep asking. And it's good. That's their job, is what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is in the Dharma, there is a certain point that you don't keep investigating.
My question is,
Yeah.
Can the whole of science be the finger that points the finger like or
I don't know. I'm not a scientist, I'm a Buddhist teacher. I teach Dharma.
I meant the Dharma you taught yesterday, being obsessed with analyzing things to death in the Dharma.
Oh yeah, no, there's again, only from the perspective of Dharma that we have a critique on that. But that doesn't mean that should stop, people should continue. That's their job, So I don't have a problem with the department. Yes, that's my point. Yeah, no, that's my point. They can exist together, but I don't need to recruit that to, what I'm saying here. You can bring those two together, and if it helps, sure, but I'm not going to try to defend Buddhism on that basis because scientific, research is constantly changing, and that's the nature of the scientific project, Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Truth is truth.
Truth is truth, but what are you going to do with it? It's that point, right? So quantum physics, great minds, are they free from suffering? Quantum physicists? No. Because they're using it for a different reason. Yeah, so in a way, the Buddhas, like I said, the five skandhas, in a way, is very primitive for treating mental illness. but it's more than sufficient. That I can say as a Dharma teacher, to be free from dukkha. Yeah, because this has been used. So now, the five skandhas. So in the enumeration of the five skandhas, the first of the five skandhas is form. And so here, form is empty. So form is referring to both coarse form and subtle, we say. What is coarse form? Coarse form is physical form. All these, right? Subtle form is what the senses perceive. So it's not literally coarse and subtle. It's talking about two ends of this experience. The actual physical object, and then what our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, actually connect to. Right? That's what's called subtle form. But form covers both of this. The material and the experience of the material that arises. So, and then the Buddha says, there are four types of form: earth, fire, wind, and water. So in comparison to the elements chart, this is really very basic. So don't trust, Buddhist physicists to build you anything. And I don't need the Buddha to be as fancy and sophisticated as, I need my chemist and my physicist to be sophisticated. So that's form. So on the basis of form, then in relation to that, that which experiences that is what's here called consciousness. And here in this case, consciousness is not a thing. Yeah. So again, what I'm trying to say here is like, the Buddha is not interested in the end on the metaphysics of consciousness. The Buddha is interested in when consciousness is present in relation to, like right now, I'm having an experience of seeing this, right? It's consciousness in that moment that the Buddha is interested in. It's always pragmatic in that sense. Yeah. As to the question, consciousness eternal or not, scientists are asking that question. I have no doubt they'll reach some kind of conclusion, but the conclusion is never final. That's the scientific endeavor. And then the Upanishads, the Hindu philosophers have also made some conclusions about the nature of consciousness along those lines. What I'm saying, the Buddha sidesteps all of that. And he says, not my department. Yeah, he says, I'm concerned about dukkha. Insofar as dukkha is concerned, where does it come from? Well, it doesn't come in a vacuum. It comes always because there is something experiencing something. So he says, what are the parts going on? Well, there is that which is aware, so we call it consciousness. So here, vijnana.
What was that word?
Vijnana. Yeah, that's in Sanskrit. So there's Vijnana, and Jnana. Jnana is know, Vijnana, to know, right? So knowing. So there's that. Well, to know is always to know something. So he says, well, what does the I, Vijnana? So he divides types. He says there are types of Vijnana. There is the eye Vijnana, there is the nose Vijnana, there is the tongue Vijnana. And so you can see, right? He's not coming up with scientific categories. He's coming up with experiential categories. Right? So when the eye sees something, right? Well, is it the eye or, all of that, right? So he says, okay, hold on. It's not the eye, like the physical eye. Right? So he'll say, so there's an eye Vijnana. And so then what does the eye Vijnana perceive? Form. Before it's big singing bowl. That comes later. First, it's form. It perceives form. And then in other places, the Buddha goes into more details. He says, so when we talk about form, what do we mean? So there are more subtle analysis like that. It says, basically, when you come right down to it, it's colors and shapes. Now, again, I'm sure, modern science will say, well, actually, there's a lot more going on. I have no problem with that. Yes, of course. If you're going to try to solve, eye problems, you need to know more, But if you need to solve dukkha, no need. Okay. So the eye consciousness perceives form. So now you have 2 of the 5 skandhas. What about the other 3 skandhas? What are the other 3 skandhas helping us see? It's helping us see the mechanics of that experience. So according to the Buddha, the first moment when a functional biological physical eye, functional, so it's not damaged, right? When that is present, when a moment of eye consciousness is present, when a object, when form, in other words, when form and color is present, when these 3 ingredients are present, a phenomenon called seeing takes place. A phenomenon called seeing has taken place. And he says, in that moment, it's a non-conceptual experience. You all have heard about non-conceptual, right? And usually it's capitalized. Non-conceptual wisdom. No, there are different types of non-conceptuality in Buddhism. Actually, the Buddha says, every first moment of any experience is non-conceptual. Literally, there's no concept. There's just contact taking place. Contact between consciousness, which is, for the sake of distinguishing here and there, you say inside, and then that which is seen outside. So the inside makes contact with the outside. In that first moment, it's a non-conceptual experience. But in the next moment, it becomes conceptual. And it starts with the next one. The next skandha is called, translated here as feeling. In Sanskrit, Pali is Vedana. But Vedana or feeling is not like feelings, It's not the stuff of songs, especially country music. It's not feelings. That's actually mental formations. All that belongs to mental formations. So maybe the translation sensation is better, but this sensation is not necessarily physical sensation. So we don't have a very good word, I think, to really capture Vedana. But what Vedana is referring to is so it's helpful. Yeah? The Buddha says, with regards to Vedana, there are three types of Vedana that arises. The Vedana of pain, the Vedana of pleasure, and the Vedana of neutrality. And so the moment contact happens, and this is important to note, without even knowing yet what it is, you already have a underlying painful, pleasurable, or neutral response to that contact. Bad news is so deeply ingrained. Like, don't care. It's precognitive. Because cognition happens in the next moment. Here translated as perception. Yeah, that's cognition. So it's precognitive. Vedana turns up already. And you say, well, where does that come from? Now, here is the Buddha says, due to habitual conditioning from previous lifetimes or previously in this life. But then we say previous lifetimes because babies, you can have twins, they have completely different response to what they like or don't like. Not even twins separated at birth, one went to the land of happy sour people and one went to the land of, happy spicy people, without anyone teaching them. They immediately have all these likes and dislikes. We say these are imprints from previous lifetimes. Not without rhyme or reason. Imprints from previous lifetimes. So on the level of Vedana, the Buddha says, note how we would use this word. I don't think he would use this word. We instinctively, he would not say instinctive, he would say due to karmic conditioning. And we would say instinctively, like, don't care. It's already present. Then the next moment is called here perception, which is also can be translated as cognition, or recognition, recognizing. And depending on our past experience, we can recognize in different ways, right? If you've never seen a singing bowl before and and the first time you see this, right? You're like, oh man, they have big noodle parties here. You're not wrong. But if you have experience, then that's the recognition that is going on for you, right? We make associations, right? We cognize based on past experiences. It's like, oh, singing bowl, oh, big singing bowl, small singing bowl, right? That's the cognition. The next skandha is mental formations. And there is where the story proliferates. There is when likes and dislike and a mix of like and dislike and all the complications of that become obvious. And then it turns out many stories and goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So all of this in a moment of experience. So the Buddha identified these 5 elements of experience. So sometimes I like to translate phenomena as experience, in that sense of experience, in a very specific kind of technical sense of having an experience. And what is not an experience? Nothing. Everything is an experience. And all experiences, according to this, is momentary. Yeah, momentary. From moment to moment. Kurt?
Would you consider a mental object under form?
A mental object.
So if you have a memory that is like
Something you're viewing.
if you're experiencing a memory or a thought,
Uh-huh.
would you consider that under form or would you consider that under mental formation? And then
No, that's the 6th sense thought.
okay, so
Yeah. Yeah, there's the 5 physical senses, and then thought is considered
okay,
a sense.
so form.
Yeah, and all the 5 form, all the 5 physical senses, they work together with the 6. The 6 is always like almost sometimes the analogy given is the 6th sense, right? Thought is like a shadow to the other 5. Yeah. And the other 5 will not proceed if thought doesn't join in.
That would be in perception,
Mhm.
the skanda of
Yeah,
perception.
the skanda of perception is where thoughts join. Yeah. So this is the Buddha's like beginning of the investigation. So the Heart Sutra includes further enumerations called over here. Let's see, on page 7. So before we go to the no, just leave the no alone. You can see the full enumerations given in 7 is form, feeling, perception, formation, consciousness. These are the 5 skandhas. That's one set of enumerations, right? Then alternatively, because again, this is not meant as exhaustive. Yeah? It's just like in one context, you can relate to any given experience that you're having and unpack that and see that. So the point is this: none of these experiences are as solid, standalone, as we tend to emotionally relate to them. That there's always parts going on, and it's the coming together of parts. Yeah, so this is not just like a strategy. This is actually how things are. So to be able to see more clearly. And in that sense, I think, yes, if your kind of intellectual makeup is such that this is too maybe imprecise, luckily, what the scientists are doing can be recruited. for this project. In that way, I would say, can be recruited for this project because it's going to show you that it's not as solid as you habitually think it is. There's all these parts going on, and when one tiny shift, right, in one part, it causes all the different parts to change. So which is the Buddha's point here, like suffering is not as solid as you think it is. Suffering is not as permanent as we think it is. We know that intellectually, but when it's happening, if someone comes along to tell you this, you're like, shut up. I don't want to hear this. Yeah, so here, the next set is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. No form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas. Here, dharmas means the object of mind. And these are what's known as the 12. And the 12 sources in Buddhist vocabulary is the ayatanas. And so here, when you analyze from the perspective of the six senses and the six sense objects, is called the 12 ayatanas. So sometimes you can also use this. When you're having an experience, right, of seeing something ugly, step back and unpack that experience to simply, there is, here it says, right, there is I and there is form. There is ear, there is sound. Everything else, it's labels. Where do these labels come from? They don't fall from the sky. They are labels that we construct.
You think that like feeling and perception and all of those things are labels?
No. Leave the skandhas alone. Now, you're using a different enumeration to help you become more aware, rather than get carried away by sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. And how do we get carried away? It's when we think sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch are inherently existing phenomena or inherently existing truths, when in fact they are temporarily arising, and arising based on your perception. I've told this like anecdote. I'll repeat it. What we call culture and sophistication, it's all just labels. Yeah, choosing one set of labels over another set of labels. Not long after finishing graduate school, now on the other end of that, teaching, I met a friend who is towards the end of her graduate school. She went to a fancy school. I only went to the University of Virginia. She went to Cornell. Ooh. So, shooting the breeze, just chit-chatting, It's like, so did you take any extracurricular courses? And she's like, yeah, I took some, I said, did you take wine tasting? Because she seemed to like wine, you know. So I said, did you take wine tasting? And I got a surprise answer because we had that at UVA, you know, you pay your fees and you get to sign up for these blah, blah, blah courses, right? Including wine tasting, you know. I said, so did you take wine tasting? She's like, no. So I said, why not? She was like, I'm quite happy with my $3.99 Trader Joe's wine. Why would I want to take a wine tasting course and ruin my life? Sophistication. Is it really worth it? Is knowledge always a good thing? I said, that is true. So in a different tradition, in the Tao Te Ching, it says, you know, there is ugly in this world because there's beauty. The arbitrariness of such labels. So it says, you know, and provocatively, the Tao Te Ching says, you know, kindness came when cruelty came. Very provocative. No, Taoists don't think there's no difference between kindness and cruelty, but it's pointing to a more basic dichotomy. We should always, a Taoist or Buddhist, both traditions would agree, always choose kindness. But even in choosing kindness all the time, don't forget that they prop up each other. That's the meaning of non-duality. Non-duality doesn't mean, therefore, it doesn't matter. It means we always choose kindness. But we don't choose kindness in a dogmatic way, not recognizing that kindness arose in relation to cruelty. Beauty arose in relation to ugly. The interdependent nature of experiences. So the training here is also what we would say, you know, not being dogmatic about it. These are not commandments to be obeyed. These are ways of helping us sort out our experiences that free us. And in freeing us, back to bodhicitta, we are in a better position to be of assistance to the degree that we can help. You know, in fact, sometimes it's not possible. We also have to accept and see that. Because happiness and suffering, at the end of the day, we create ourselves. You cannot drag someone to happiness. Unfortunately, it seems like you can drag someone to suffering. Certainly, I have felt being dragged into suffering. It's your fault, your fault, your fault. Now, as you all know, I always have all these footnotes. Yeah, you can take the person out of the PhD, you can take the PhD out of the person. I always have these footnotes, okay? This thing about, you know, how you create your own happiness and suffering, be careful with this. Don't extend this beyond your own training. Be careful with this, because you cannot apply this in the context of social justice, of trying to fix the world on that level. Instead, if you look at history, Buddhist kings, Buddhist privileged class have used these things to justify structural injustice. You should not be blind to that. Don't whitewash Buddhist history. Does no one any good. So I'm hesitant, to overextend these teachings into all and every domain. Not that it is not possible. I'm just saying be careful. I see, like on social media, people I don't know very well, but sort of in the Buddhist world, they will post things like this. Well, we are responsible for your own suffering, Just say, this is the Buddha's teachings. And often in relation to political things going on. I mean, mostly what I see is like, using Dharma to justify what we call progressive, liberal. But it's not the whole picture. I also see people using Buddhism to justify right-wing ex-President Trump's brand of how to fix the world using Buddhist teachings. Just be careful, whichever camp you belong to. The Dharma is always in the end. What I can say as a Dharma teacher, absolutely safe, is you apply these teachings only to your own training. You want to take it further? Please do it very carefully. Please do it very carefully. Of course, we don't live like, right? Barricaded lives. Everything we do kind of bleed and flows into everything, myself included. I'm just saying, be careful once you want to take these teachings that you're learning and try to apply it into social problems, political problems, cultural problems, economic problems, environmental problems. It's not so simple. It's not so simple. It's really complex, Even just to engage in giving has become so complicated. Right? Don't you feel like that? You're kind of paralyzed, You walk around and someone say, you have change? Do I? Because it's really complex. Really difficult. Next here, yeah. It says on page 7, no I dhatu up to and including no mental consciousness dhatu. This is the third set of enumerations called the 18 dhatus. You have the 5 skandhas, you have the 12 ayatanas, and you have the 18 dhatus. And what are the 18 dhatus? It's actually a finer comb than the 12. The 12 is the senses and the sense objects. Right? Eye and forms, ear and sounds, nose and odors, so on and so forth. Now, when it comes to the 18 dhatus, it's the sense, it's the objects, and the consciousnesses. So it's further, right, fine-tuning the sense, dividing it into, there is the physical eye, and then there is the consciousness that arises in particular to eye. So eye doesn't have a nose consciousness. Eyes can't smell. I mean, to state the obvious. Nose can see. And so it's a finer comb. And certain circumstances, employing the 18 dhatus can do the job better than applying the rubric of the 12 ayatanas.
Kind of circumstances.
Hmm?
What kind of circumstances are better suited for it?
I don't know. You go test it out. I can theorize for you. That's why take 3 10-day Vipassana retreats and we'll come back. Then you won't even need to ask that. Part of the method of these retreats, right? It's like for 16 hours, you have to sit there and you don't get to do anything else, you know? So no matter what the method that they give you, you're going to do what you're going to do. I mean, it's your mind, right? Of course, you know, okay, the method, you know, initially is to, in the Goenka Vipassana, initially, you know, like you do the body scan, and then, you know, you also do like mindfulness of breath to some degree. But then, of course, it's 16 hours per day, right? So then, at first, you do whatever you want to do, you know. You get so bored with scanning the body, sensations of the body, you get so bored with watching your breath, then you start writing a novel. You get bored of writing a novel, you start yelling and screaming, I hate this, this is terrible. Why did I sign up for this? I should never listen to Han Lai. He's a sadistic fool. La 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 la. Then, you know, then you run out of that, right? Then you're like, okay, I know I'm not going to run away, but I'm going to think about how to run away. Step by step, you know? But the method there is that eventually you do run out of things to think about. Then you remember there's the method, right? Then you go to the method. You're like, okay, there's nothing else to do. I'm stuck here. Then you start to apply the method. And then, actually, everything else is exhausting. I'm going to apply the method. Then you apply the method, you know. But you don't have a lot of vocabulary to play with. So you focus on the method. And so that's why they make you sit through 3 of these before they will tell you these things. There is a rhyme to, there is a reason to that. It's helpful, you know. So in some ways, when we become, you know, and my fault, right? I want an audience. I want to keep the doors open here. So I offer these classes, and you're like, oh, this is really good, you know, because this, if I just say sit for 10 days, you know, I don't know, maybe I won't turn up either. And 3 of you sitting here for 10 days. But really, you know, when you come right down to it, you have to experience this. Then these words won't just like, you know, stir up like, right? Whatever connections I'm able to make. Yeah. Which is not saying that it's wrong. It's just saying, well, it's not where this is pointing us to. Then, more words, right? So no ignorance, no end of ignorance. So ignore all the no's at this point because we're still on the enumerations level. So before you can say no, you need to know what is being negated. So what is being negated is the enumeration. So ignorance, end of ignorance up to no old age and death. an end of old age and death. What that is referencing is to what we call the 12 links of interdependent arising. That is yet another cone. Now you analyze, you observe these 12. This is the finest of, in this set of enumerations, the finest is to look at the 12 links of interdependent arising. So this is a loop in a way that there's no beginning or end. But traditionally, it will start enumerating with ignorance. Because in a way, you could say that's the beginning, but it's not. That ignorance don't come from nowhere. It comes from previously. Yeah. So then, from ignorance, right? Then there is what's called sanskara. Sanskara is type of mental action. Then from there, consciousness arises, then name and form, and so on and so forth. So it's the 5 skandhas kind of teased out in finer detail. So you can look that up. And then in Buddhist, so I said Buddha did not teach metaphysics, did not teach philosophy. Buddhists certainly developed Buddhist metaphysics, Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist this, Buddhist that, based on the Buddha's teachings. Yeah. So then more and more sophisticated ways of talking about these things certainly develop over time. And so in that one direction, this 12 links of interdependent origination, they say it accounts for a process that goes from last life to this life to future life. So they say it is over the span of 3 lifetimes. Yeah. But some scholars have shown how in the earliest Buddhist teachings, it doesn't need this whole thing about 3 lifetimes. That in one moment of experience, all 12, kind of, you go through all 12 of it. So that birth and death is happening from every moment of experience. So the arising of the experience is the birth. And then going through all these 12 links, the 12 steps, and the death happens. So here when it says no old age and death, up to including like no ignorance, this is the reversing of the 12. So when the Buddha taught about the 12, he taught about suffering comes when it turns in this direction. How to end suffering? Reverse this. So the 12 links going forward and going backward. So that's the enumeration given here. Then another enumeration, a very famous one, is here on page 7 again. No suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path. These are the 4 noble truths. Yeah. Suffering, cessation of suffering, no, origin of suffering, cessation of suffering, and path to the end of suffering. The 4 noble truths. That's the enumeration given here. Yeah, so the next one, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment, that is not a standard enumeration, as far as I know. But I don't know everything, so maybe you'll find what enumeration those 3 are. Yeah. So the classic categories, the classic enumerations given in the Hinayana, we need to use those tools to help us kind of sort out what is going on when I see something, when I hear something, when I feel something. When we sort it out this way, then we see that the I is always an add-on. The sense of I. Then even the sense of I it's not universally a problem. The commonsensical I, the functional I, no problem. The exaggerated I. So in later Tibetan Buddhist philosophy, they will tease out the differences between the functional I, the commonsensical I, and the exaggerated I. So they say the exaggerated I is the I that the Buddha wants us to go tackle. And that is the culprit. So it's not the case that there is no I without qualifications. There is the exaggerated I. Don't substantially exist. It can exist temporarily for sure. So they say one instance where this I turns up very strongly is when you have been falsely accused of something. That sense of I comes up very strongly. When you're embarrassed, that sense of I comes up very strongly. When you have been wronged, comes up very strongly. So the Hinayana layer is using these enumerations. The Mahayana level begins with the no, 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 no. The negating. To negate the five skandhas is not to say the Buddha made a mistake, now he is revising his teachings. Oops! Got it all wrong for 15 years. Never mind, let's move on to my latest understanding. No, 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 no. It doesn't mean that. It's now that you have understood it in this way, let's look deeper. When we look deeper, even form, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness, they don't have substantial inherent nature. It's relational. They are posited in a relational way, in a functional way. So a maybe crude example I can offer you, but might be helpful. It's somewhat like saying, first we have to learn not to be bigots by understanding that people are not how they look, how they dress. Yeah, you should not judge people on the basis of how they look, how they dressed, what zip code they have, where they went to school, all of that. So that's the first, right? Then, more deeply, you should also not judge people on the basis of male, female, tall, short, because even those are dependently arising and based on projection. So at the Hinayana level, we are shown the basic building blocks of reality. At the Mahayana level, even those basic building blocks should be recognized as dependently arising. That maleness doesn't stand alone. Maleness is something posited on the construct of femaleness. Big based on small. Is this long or short, right? Trick question. Yeah. Right? Yeah, depends, right? So to be able to see that, that's at the Mahayana level. The perfection of wisdom, the more profound look. So now we should have a quick lunch break.